There is a monument that was allegedly erected in 1927 on a site in Tokyo called the Saihoji Temple site, which is in the city of Suginami in Tokyo metropolitan area, as it is called today, the Sugunami city. Back then it was called Toyo, Toyoma, Toyotoma area or district, but it was rezoned in the 1930s. Anyway, there's quite amazing something energy about this particular monument. This 10-foot high, 4-foot wide, somewhat concrete, poured concrete looking monument that appeared really fake to me from the moment I saw it. Anyway, it had an inscription on it, and then many years later, I saw this photo in someone's book, and people asked me about it, and I thought, oh, it's fake, I'm sure, and I read this story about it and all that sort of stuff, but there was no references to where they got their information other than their own little story, which was quite confusing. And anyway, I could say a lot about this particular book, but I won't. But anyway, everyone was asking me at the time because everyone knew I'd been to Japan and he'd been making these statements, and everyone knew that all those that did know me were asking me what I thought, what I thought, what I thought. So anyway, I kept quiet to a degree because I had my thoughts. I discussed these with Phyllis and a few other people, and blah blah blah. But I really thought there was something wrong. And I'm not pointing the finger at that writer per se, but there was something wrong with the whole stone itself. Number one is I started to think, how in the hell did this 10-foot high, 4-foot wide concrete monstrosity, and I was really into bombing of World War II before I learned Reiki. I just found it an interesting subject as interest, bomb damage. So it has nothing to do with that. But we all have our funny quirks. But I thought, how does this stand the bombing and air raids of the bombing that happened in World War II by the Americans? I can understand the little one, that granite-looking little one, was got the Usui name on it, just Usui. Um, and I can understand that maybe surviving, maybe on the ground, but not that big one, because it would have been just smashed to smithereens and very badly damaged. But the two of them together, not at all, not at all. And I started to look at maps of US bombing air raids and lining them up over maps to see how well they fitted in. So I thought, well, who would know? And that was be the planning council of the local council, the municipal council for that district, which at the time when I inquired was the Suginami City Council. And they all have these historical redevelopment committees and projects. And so I got on to the person in charge of that, wrote to them in writing, but also spoke to them over the phone, and asked them about the Sugunami Temple, the Saihoji Temple in particular, of what happened to the records there. Are there any old photos? The usual kind of questions. What survived? there was anything moved at any time, because people were hinting that they had moved this stone from somewhere else, according to this Japanese Reiki article that was written on it. And anyway, I sort of got a really what I expected, the reply letter from the Suganami Council, that everything in the area, the Saihoji Temple, the records, the documents, the everything, monuments, everything was destroyed in that area by the bombing of World War II. And so nothing survived. So not only do we have the aerial photographs, but we have and then they really didn't start rebuilding that Saihoji Temple and asking for donations until about 1980. Because Tokyo had other priorities. You can't give priority to a temple in an old graveyard as a priority project when the infrastructure of Tokyo is demanding all the money to build that properly from the ground up again, and better and earthquake proof as well, because they also had more earthquakes happening around that. So, yeah, I mean, the evidence is there, and I say, well, prove me wrong then. It's a fake grave. It's been put there for a reason. And the interesting thing is, it was first written about in as existing in a Japanese magazine called The Twilight Zone. That's why I refer to it as the Twilight Zone article. And the article was in a spiritual magazine published in Japan in the mid 1980s, and this one was called the Twilight Zone magazine. And it was a sort of really frailing spiritual magazine, very unpopular. But Beth Gray got her Reiki master student, Miko Matsui, to advertise her workshops in it. And she also uh, spoke about Beth's new book, The Reiki Factor, put a picture of Usui in this advertisement in it, and also a translation of the Usui Monument that she said she discovered there, and a picture of this Ogawa fellow, and some 7 sort of certificates, but didn't actually say anything on them, but they were still in there. You really have to look at this and study this Japanese Reiki article. Now, the woman who wrote, or allegedly, or is said to have written the Reiki article, Mieko Matsui, was a Reiki master trained by Barbara Weber Ray. And she went to Japan to take Reiki back to Japan. Now, in the Reiki article called In the Twilight Zone, there's a picture of Usui, there's a picture of Barbara Weber Ray, there is a picture of Barbara Weber Ray, picture of Usui, Mieko doing Reiki hand positions, advertising her dates. Then she's telling the transcription of this discovering Usui's monument, his tomb, and what it says on there, and where it is basically, but it's not the same, doesn't really say anything. But there's no picture of it. Now, if you're a journalist and you've got a translation of something, wouldn't you make that a priority to actually put a picture of the same stone that you're having translated that says you've just discovered, over and above some other pictures of this old Ogawa man that no one knows anything about at all? And it doesn't even say Reiki on his so-called certificates. And there's no real evidence that he even existed, but wouldn't you think that the picture of the actual monument for a New York Japanese journalist would be more of a priority? But taking that one point, wouldn't it be weird that a Japanese journalist, as busy as she was and a Reiki master, who's just taken Reiki back into um, Japan, teaching it successfully, and wouldn't you think then that would be a highlight story of hers to publish somewhere along the way? You know, even in Beth Gray's book or an article somewhere, there isn't anything. But instead, she hands all her research, and she says so in the actual Twilight Zone Reiki article, over to another person by the name of Tanomi Sakai, or Tanami Sakai, who finishes off the Reiki article. And she doesn't even, we don't even know if she's even a Reiki master at all. She just finishes it off and has it published. And Mitsue Suzuki, she just goes back to New York City and says no more about it. So it's really strange just looking in that article, not only the construction of the inscription in it and how little it is and how really crazy it is. Yes, the people, the admirals' names, yes, they do exist, but hey, it's not hard to put a couple of names like that in there out of a book. You know, you find a couple of admirals' names easily and attribute that to that. But there's no record of any monument existing in that area at the time of, uh, well, 1927 or even at the time of now. It just doesn't go away and come back and appear because the Saihoji Temple is actually written on the bottom of it. So I don't know, you know, it's like, please enlighten me if you've got an idea or an insight. I find this monument, this Machiavellian monument and Reiki article, The Twilight Zone, deliberately planted by somebody who had means, desire to control Reiki, desire to destroy the Reiki lineage away from Hayashi and Takata and Phyllis, by the content of the actual article itself, because it doesn't even mention them at all, and create another entire line of Reiki that goes nowhere. It just goes off into thin air and presents all these very disjointed story and expect us to believe that Japanese Reiki article. The more I read that, and I've read it in English and Japanese over and over and over again, slept at it staring in my face. And it has fooled and sent so many good, well-intended people searching for Usui in fake, false leads, getting nowhere, finding nothing. Yeah, you'll find um, tens of thousands of Usuis in the Gifu prefecture, no problem. That's where the Usui name comes from. But gee whiz, you know, I couldn't find any single document other than one, which is the 1928 newspaper document with the name Akara Usui in it, as written. And that's the only one. That's it. None. Nada. But on Tokyo Yokoi, I've got hundreds, hundreds and thousands of books on him of all sorts of great information. So I feel sorry for those who got seriously misled, deliberately misled, but for resting your theses or your stories on that monument in the Saihoji Temple. I think someone there has a lot to answer for, and I can easily say that because I've looked at you, I've tried to ring you, I've tried to talk to you. I get no answers, no matter even if I get someone Japanese to ring you, you avoid talking to anybody outside about that particular grave. Full stop. Period. Doesn't matter who that letter rings or inquires, there's either no answer, nothing, or it's totally avoided or evasive. I've tried and tried and tried, and so have my friends. So something's very odd, and you'd have to have a really very, very good reason why for me to even believe you now. So, and I probably never will because of the level of deception that's gone on here. And the person who presented that deception had a lot to gain from it, a lot of power to gain from it, and had the ability to write that and to fund the building or the creation of that fake monument and to pay that temple to put it there to mislead people, then to drop little keys around everywhere so that people would eventually find it. Quite a brilliant little plan, and it worked, sadly. It worked. So that's what I think of the Usui Monument in in Tokyo. There's nothing there of Usui anyway. All the dirt was just rubbish. Left there nothing. No ashes were found or interred there from anybody, anyhow. So anyway, it's sad that someone could be so dishonest to do that to you all, for those that fell for it, and that's where I feel a bit sad. And it's done a lot of damage. You have no idea when you sit down and you start to think about how much damage that has done. And I can say that. I can say that because I've really looked into it. So I'm the one that's making that statement that you've been deceived by that fake monument at the Saihoji Temple they call the Usui Monument. You've been deceived even with some of the images that have been put out there. They're fake too. So think about it. I'm sorry for that one. But you got a real one if you go down to the Ninzenji Temple in Kyoto and go to the heritage garden around the back, and you'll find Usui there. His energy is interned there. And he's looking forward to saying hi to you. Yes, he actually speaks a lot of languages, because he didn't only learn English, he spoke Hindi, he spoke German fluently, apparently, and French, and a little Russian because he used to correspond with Tolstoy, the playwright. They used to write letters to each other backwards and forwards in the 1894-ish period. Anyway, I'm closing off now. I've delivered to you what I wanted to say. I may come back and speak on other little topics on Usui, about my book with the Samurai Reiki Master. And but I'm sorry to say what I felt and found about the Usui Monument in Tokyo. That it's a fake and it's an atrocity. And if I'm wrong, I apologize. But I don't feel I am. I'm happy to be wrong, but I know I'm not. Thank you.